everyone, and welcome to the Becoming an Empowered Parent online series, offering expert tools for embracing imperfection, building connection, and creating more peace and joy within your family. I'm so happy that you're here. I'm your host, Debbie Zeichner. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, parent coach, and mindfulness facilitator. And today I am so excited and thrilled and honored to be joined by the wonderful Tosha Schore. And today we're going to be talking all about how to raise emotionally intelligent boys, a very, very important topic. So I'm so thrilled to have you. Welcome, Tosha.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this.
Yeah. So before we dive in to today's very juicy topic, I want to tell you a bit more about Tosha. So Tosha Schore is on a mission to create a more peaceful world, one sweet boy at a time. I love that. By supporting you to care for yourself, connect with your boy deeply, set limits lovingly, and play wildly. She brings a burst of energy and optimism to parenting and is an expert at simple solutions to what feel like overwhelmingly complicated problems. Through her online communities, Tosha helps break the isolation of modern parenting and lifts your confidence so you're better equipped to face the challenges of raising young boys. Tosha is a trainer of hand-in-hand parenting, co-author of Listen, 5 Simple Tools to Meet Your Everyday Challenges, and the creator of Parenting Boys Peacefully, a 10-day reconnect, an online group experience shared by over 12,000 parents worldwide. And I've been in that group. I love it. It's amazing. Tosha is also a frequent guest expert on podcasts, online, and in-person conferences. And again, Tosha, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. So as the mom of a very strong-willed 13-year-old boy, I have found Tosha's work to be so helpful and incredibly inspirational. And Tosha, I really love that you've made it your mission to truly recognize and understand the unique needs and emotional life of our boys to really help us connect with them on a deep and authentic level. So I absolutely love and appreciate that about your work. So really thank you for what you do and all that you offer. So firstly, now we know a little bit more about you professionally. We'd love to know a little bit more about you personally. Can you tell us a bit about your journey and how you got into this work?
My journey, I got into this work, I think the way many people get into the work that they do, by something big happening in their life, oftentimes a challenging moment or period of time. And I would say that when my kids were really young, I got to a real bottom out point with my parenting. In fact, I think I was pregnant with my third, but I just found myself reacting in ways that I did not feel proud of. I was yelling, I was losing my patience, I was really worried about my boys and their behaviors. I was getting like feedback from the public. I don't know, the public always seems like they can feel like they can comment on your parenting. But anyway, that something was wrong, or they're wild, or this, that, and the other thing. And I just felt like I was losing my confidence. I didn't have the confidence that I needed. I was also working. I was falling asleep at work because I was nursing all night. I was exhausted. I was just a wreck. I was really, truly a wreck. And I really serendipitously ended up in a support group run by now my co-author of Listen, Patty Whitfler, that literally happened to be 10 minutes from my house. Yeah. And so I started going to that support group and found there the tools and the support that I needed to be able to shift the way that I was parenting and be able to regain my confidence, so much so that I wanted to help others do the same. So that's like the short story of how I got into the parent ed bit and coaching, the very short version. And in terms of boys, that's probably more of an interesting story, actually.
Yeah,
so
I love it.
When I was pregnant with my first, so that was, 9/11 was happening. There was all kinds of crazy stuff happening. And there was a certain point in my pregnancy where all of a sudden I had this moment of, oh my God, what if I have a boy? Mm. And you have to understand that I grew up pretty much with a single mom. It was me and her. I don't have any siblings. And we were like the dynamic duo. And my world was very 1970s. I grew up in Oakland, California, in the United States. It was very, lefty politics. We were very, the feminist movement was going strong. There was a lot of female power and women power. And it was a really exciting time to be alive and growing up, and it was very cool, but it never occurred to me that I could actually have a boy. So when I had this thought, like, what did I do? Well, I went and called my mom, right?
Uh-huh.
So I called my mom and I said, Mom, what if I have a boy?
Oh,
And there was just silence on the other end of the line, just silence on the other end. It felt like a year, right? It was probably 30 seconds. And then she goes, don't worry, we'll figure it out. and
that's
we did figure it
awesome.
out.
Yeah.
We did figure it out. But as funny as that story is, there were some worlds that I did need to figure out how to marry, because I had this definite sort of, feminist side, not sort of, but a very sort of feminist perspective on the world. And then I had these boys that I loved more than anything in the world, and how they couldn't be bad, right? They couldn't be the bad guy. I had to figure out how do I marry these two parts of my life. So there was that piece of it. And then there was also this piece of just looking out into the world and seeing that most of what was going on in the negative sphere. So I'd open the paper and see, rapes on college campuses, and terrorist attacks and wars raging around the globe, and most of this at the hands of men. And I had this aha moment where I thought, gosh, well, every one of these men was at some point a sweet boy, somebody's baby boy. And what happened? And I'm not naive, and I know there are socioeconomic issues, and there are race issues, and there are so many different issues that go into building a person to who they become, and the environment is so much a part of that. But I also felt like we as parents of young boys have an amazing opportunity to change the world by shifting the way that we parent them. That if we could raise emotionally intelligent boys, if we could put men out in the world who were in touch with their full rainbow spectrum of emotions, not just anger, then the world could, and I still believe will, look very different.
Yes.
So that's how the short story, believe it or not, of how I came to the work that I do.
That's an amazing story, and your heart is truly in it because you see the future, right? You see the future, your heart is in, you're passionate about it. I think it's so, that's why I'm such a fan, and I absolutely love what you do. And so let's dive in, let's talk about that, because that makes me think about the messaging that so many parents have been raised with, right? That boys should be tough, that they should suck it up, that they need to hold it in, or they will be seen or viewed as weak. And so I wonder how you work with parents. What can you share as far as what do you say to parents to help them kind of shift this narrative a bit, to understand that from a different perspective and to begin to shift this narrative?
It's interesting. I think a lot of parents actually, it's not that they don't want to make that shift. It's more that they either don't know how or it's scary.
Yes.
We all want to protect our little boys. We want life to go well for them. But if I say to a father, who I'm working with, well, if he gets hurt, he falls and he gets hurt, just let him cry. It's okay. It's healthy for him to cry. Just stay with him, and he's on the playground. It's okay. Just stay with him. Let him cry. He's resistant. Oftentimes, I see this as a pattern with a lot of fathers that I work with, because so often he has been shamed once or many times for having expressed emotion in that way. And he doesn't want that for his boy, right? So as moms or as partners of those fathers, oftentimes we can be really critical, like they're not on board and they're trying to toughen up the boy and all of that. But I think it's really important that we have perspective on their stories also. And this is a gross generalization, right? Not every father is like this. Not every mother is, what I'll talk about in a second, but we do see patterns. I see patterns in all of the parents that I work with. So I just like to put that out there. And then from a mom's perspective also, it can be hard because we are often very triggered by our boys' behaviors sometimes, and a lot of times, a lot of the clients that I work with are dealing with things like aggression. And as women, mothers, we can often be exceptionally triggered by that because most of us have some sort of history of either physical abuse or emotional abuse or sexism. All of us have experienced, right, to various degrees. And those feelings can be really, really stirred up by a little boy, cussing us out or trying to kick us, or all of these things that our boys can do when they feel scared or they're in a hard spot. So it's not that parents don't want to raise an emotionally intelligent boy. It's like we just bring so much baggage with us. So I guess the answer to your question really is, I have parents start with themselves. So we do this work that's kind of dualistic. On the one hand, we're working on our own triggers to identify and work through those so that we can actually be present with our boys when they're struggling. And at the same time, we're implementing tools to help our boys heal and function better in the world. So it's not really like an either or. It's more of like one of this, one of this, one of this, one of this, and we kind of plot our way through and make all kinds of mistakes and try something different, that kind of a thing.
Well, and it makes me think about our defenses, right? I think about our defenses and how sometimes those defenses come across. And I think what you're reminding me, and what's so important to remind all of us, is that those defenses are there to protect us.
Yeah.
When I think about the dad, I hadn't thought about it in that way. That when I think about the dad who's getting really angry or upset at his son for crying on the, baseball field, that, like you're saying, it's coming from this place of, I want to protect. I mean, there could be multiple parts to it, but at least one of the parts is that's coming from this very vulnerable place of, I want to protect. And
Absolutely.
it helps us, that really shifts the lens in terms of how we even start to work with, maybe, as you said, if you have a spouse or a partner who has that frame of mind, it's a different starting point, which I think is really insightful.
Yeah. Yep. We just don't know. We all come with a story.
Yeah, we all do come with a story.
Let me just stop my phone from beeping.
No problem. See, it was an aha moment.
Yeah.
We planned it like that. So what would you say? I think one of the questions, on all of our minds, especially those of us raising boys, is, what can we do now to raise boys and men who are comfortable with their feelings?
Yep.
Right.
So the easiest thing to do is, rather when our boys show us feeling, to not try to shut it down, not try to distract them, but actually just sit with them through it. So, I had a question today inside my membership community that somebody asked, where as recording, we're going through this COVID-19 pandemic, right? And a mother posted that her son was having fears. Like, he was saying, I have a really scary thought in my head. And she was saying, I'm not really sure what to do. Basically, I am talking him out of it. I'm saying, how do I get him to not feel scared? How do I distract him or move him on to something else or convince him that there's nothing scary going on? And what I suggested is that if this behavior pattern is reproducing itself or showing up over and over again, right? So the fear isn't going away as you're doing this, then that's information, right? That's basically telling us that we're not helping him heal. We're not getting to the underlying cause of what's going on, right? We're just kind of getting through the moment. Now, sometimes we have to do that as parents, but if we're talking about how do we heal those fears, how do we help him with that, then we really need to actually sit with him. And we could just sit there and say, I'm sorry you're scared. Or I'm here with you, or I'm going to keep you safe. We actually don't have to dig. We don't have to figure out why and what. And this boy is not telling his mom what he's afraid of. She's like, I wish he would just tell me what it was. And he's not at the point where he's going to tell her that. And he may eventually tell her that, but I'll tell you from experience that that's not going to come from her prying and asking over and over again. It's going to come from actually her listening. And eventually it may come out, it may not. But we have to first build that connection. So really just listening and doing your own work so that you're comfortable, that you're actually not worried, that you're not scared when the feelings come up. We talked about aggression earlier. We can't stand in the face of aggression of our sweet boy, his aggressive behavior, if he's hitting or spitting or kicking or swearing or all those things. If that scares the heck out of us, right? If we are just terrified, oh my God, what are our neighbors going to think, and what's going to happen at school, and if he's like this when he's 4, what's he going to be like when he's 14. And if that's our narrative or the record that's playing over and over again in our minds, we're not going to be able to show up for him in the way that he needs, because if we're mirroring back fear, all that does is compound the fear that he's already feeling, and the behaviors worsen. So that's why they're going back to like working on us, doing tools, right? So here we're listening, but we also have to go like, okay, well, why am I so triggered about this? Yes, he's kicking me. He's 4. It seems like kind of crazy because all I did is put sauce on the spaghetti. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal, right? But in fact, he's feeling it to be a big deal. So rather than diminish it, accept the feelings as real. Don't judge them, right? So often our kids' feelings are around things that to us seem just inconsequential, right? But to them, it's big, and we need to acknowledge that. To them, it feels big. We don't need to judge. We don't need to have a hierarchy of whose upsets are more worthwhile of a tantrum, ours or theirs, right? Everybody gets to have their tantrums. It's just that we've got developed brains, so we can make a appointment with our therapist or our parent coach, or we can, we have strategies that we've developed that we can use to care for our emotional health. They don't have that yet. So we are that person for them. So listening, moving in close and listening is the simplest and the best thing to do. Not fixing. And the other thing I'll say is just not talking too much. Talk so damn much, all of us. Trying to figure out the why, trying to, get them to do something different, trying to stop whatever the behavior is. But if we can just get comfortable with being present through it, it's like that kid's book that you can't go under it, can't go over it.
Yeah, you got to go through it.
Going on a bear hunt, you got to go through it, and you do have to go through it, because that's where the real healing takes place.
Yeah, I mean, I love that, because it's so much about really, it's giving them permission to feel. Yeah. It's giving ourselves permission to let them have their feelings. It doesn't mean it's good or bad or right or wrong, right? Those feelings are what make us human and vibrant. And I think, like you said, when we get so caught up in our own fears, we then are not present, right? We kind of step out, and then that's when the behaviors start to go up and up and up and start to escalate. And so I think it's really just like you're saying, it's so much about that permission.
Right. And we create, I'm sorry, I was just saying, like, we create this hierarchy of feelings, right? So, joy and happiness are way on the top. We're always supposed to look like our, Instagram posts and all the beauty and togetherness and all of that, right? And then, anger is way down at the bottom. Sadness, well, that's labeled as feminine, girly, right? Or disappointment. So we've categorized all these feelings, but really what we're doing, if we move in close and we listen to our boys as they grow, if we listen to all those feelings, then the message we're giving them is like, you are human and I am human, and it is totally normal at various points in our lives to feel all these feelings.
Yep. And
that's really what emotional intelligence is. I mean, I'm really on a mission to teach parents to be advocates for their boys. And one of the ways that I teach them to be advocates for their boys is to advocate for their right to feel. That doesn't mean we advocate for, like, quote unquote bad behaviors, but we do advocate for their right to feel, for example, however they're going to feel about a limit that we might decide to set. Yeah. They don't have to like the limit that you set as a parent. I don't like limits usually that people set for me. I'm not liking that somebody told me I have to stay home right now and be locked in my house for 2 months.
Yeah.
Right? But I can have feelings about that. It's all right.
Absolutely. So, speaking of emotional intelligence, for those who aren't familiar with it, Tosha, do you want to just define it for those who may or may not be familiar with the term emotional intelligence?
Well, I can't give you a dictionary definition, but I can give you my definition.
Please, we'd love your definition.
Yeah, the definition that I work with, like when I talk about emotional intelligence, what I mean is I want my boys to grow up, or your boys to grow up, and have the ability to face each situation that they are confronted with as a new situation. So without, like, all their baggage kind of caving in on them so that they get confused about what's appropriate, right? So in other words, we've done enough of our own work on our own histories, that we can show up new, and that we can go like, okay, we can basically be in our thinking brain rather than have our emotional brain take over. Yeah, so that's my goal. That's my goal.
Yes, yes, and understanding other people. So it's understanding our own feelings and being okay with that, and then understanding other people's feelings as well. And I always think, the boys that we're raising today are going to be in relationships one day, right? And I know so many parents that I work with will complain, my husband doesn't understand, or my partner doesn't understand, or they just don't understand me, or they can't listen to my feelings. And so it's all the more reason, right, to really hone in on this important skill that is a beautiful skill for our boys to have. So,
and thanks for bringing that other point. That's absolutely right. Part of emotional intelligence is being able to read others, and that's part of that. Being able to see the situation as a new one that hasn't existed before, right? So if I'm meeting you and your hairstyle reminds me of somebody else who I've met before who wasn't very nice to me, I need to be able to put that aside and be like, wait, no, this is Debbie. Like, I actually don't know much about Debbie, and I'm going to assume that she's totally different from this other person, even though I'm feeling these feelings all of a sudden because I got my emotional memory was triggered by your hair, for example.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
So yes, we want our boys to grow up and be able to read others and make good choices in relationship to others and make good behavior choices.
Thank you. So another question I hear more often, even lately, is what do you say for parents, or suggestions that you have for moms who may have difficulty relating to their boys? I know even just for myself, over the years, it kind of waxes and wanes with my son, where there's things that he's so interested in. Obviously, they're just things I have zero interest in. And so I kind of have to push myself to say, okay, tell me more about this. And I know for many moms, they really struggle with that. So do you have any suggestions for moms who struggle with that?
Yeah, I have a couple suggestions. So one suggestion is to be okay with the fact that you're great at some things and not that great at other things. And that's always going to be true. So if you're a mom who has a partner, then that partner probably has different strengths than you. Let that person play to their strengths and you play to yours. Now, that doesn't mean that if you hate gunplay, for example, that you just ignore it forever and, put the kibosh on it and you're like, no way, no gunplay, blah, 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 and you get all blah about it. And you don't look at it at all, because if there's so much emotion there behind it, then you probably want to take a look. But it does mean that if you have a partner who loves it and can get silly around it and play Nerf gun fights, that you can stand out of the way and let that person do their thing and have a good time without freaking out and judging and all of that stuff that we do. So shine where you shine, and be okay with the fact that you might not be fabulous at everything. Some people are better at listening to feelings, some people are better at playing. I just want to, one little caveat is that I do suggest that as a mom, you push yourself into those places of discomfort. So just because you're really uncomfortable with gunplay doesn't mean you just ignore it forever. So to share my experience, that I don't know why I just thought of that right now, but I do get a lot of parents who are scared, because like I said, a lot of people are dealing with aggression and they're coming to me and their kids are little kids and they're worried they're going to be the next school shooter. Right. I'm like, okay, well, there's a lot between here and there. So let's dive in. But one of the things that moms can get really scared about is gunplay. And I hated it when my kids were little. My boys were little. I've got 3 boys. I forget if we talked about that. I guess I said that. And they wanted to do this gunplay. And I was like, no, I nixed that. I'm like, no gunplay. And my husband was just like, dude, what's the big deal? We turned everything into guns when we were kids. We didn't have Nerf guns, but we just took sticks and this and that. And my first step was to sit back and let him do it and say it's okay. And I had a rule at the beginning, you can't shoot me above the neck. But first I think it was you can't shoot me at all. Then it was you can't shoot me above the neck. But anyway, my point is that I took incremental steps from the, oh my God, I can't do this, to like, okay, I'll do it, but you can't shoot me, but I'll play with you guys, or you can't shoot me above the head. And then what happened was really interesting, which is that I got really into it. Like it was super fun. And then it got to the point where like, oh, I love this. So we want to push ourselves in that way. So a
Yeah,
little bit,
definitely.
little sidetrack there, but I think the story can help just illustrate how we can push ourselves, but still not have to be the one who's the greatest at it.
Right.
And I have one other thing, which I think is a really great strategy for a parent who doesn't like to do something that their child likes to do, or feels like they're not as close to that child maybe as they would like to be. And that is doing regular special time. And special time is one of the 5 tools that we teach in Listen. And what it is, real quick, is just a type of one-on-one time that you would spend with your little one, and you'd name it special time or whatever you want to name it, and you'd set a timer, and this is key in answer to your question, and the child leads. So you say, okay, sweet boy, I've got 5 minutes or 15 minutes, and we can do whatever you want. And your job as a mom, I'm talking to the moms because you asked about moms, but dads, anybody, grandparents, anybody can do this. You say, we can do whatever you want, and then you follow their lead. Your job, like I started to say, is to just delight in him, delight in him. And that doesn't mean you have to be like all sappy, like, oh my God, you're amazing at this, I love you. It doesn't have to be like that, but like you're present. You're not multitasking. You're not checking your phone. You're not answering the door. You're not cooking soup at the same time, or folding laundry, or answering work emails. Everything else is off. Otherwise, it's not special time. You're only with him. And his job is to lead, and you just follow his lead, and you're just pleased with him.
And knowing that there's a time limit on that.
Just what I was going to say, is knowing that there's a time limit will allow you to get a window into his world, but also not get stuck, playing with the train for 10 hours and finding yourself zoning out because it's so friggin' boring, right? Or whatever it is. And kids will oftentimes use special time to experiment with things that they know they're not allowed to do outside of special time, or that you don't particularly like. So that's why the timer, one of the reasons why the timer is so important. And most parents, when they do this, even if they find it hard at the beginning, do end up feeling much, much closer to their sweet boy after implementing a regular practice, even just for like 10 days, like you said, you did my reconnect, even just 10 days, people are like, I got amazing results just by 10 days of this.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just them knowing that you're interested. I mean, I know I learned, my son loves to play basketball, and he usually does it with my husband, and he'll say every now and then, he'll say, Mom, come rebound with me. And of course I have 50 million things to do, and the last thing I want to do is rebound, but I'm so just thrilled and honored by the invitation that I'm like, great, let's play. Thank you for even thinking about me for doing this. And then I recognize when I've hit my limit, and I'm like, okay, thank you so much. And now I have to go do this. But it's like, I always think I never want to decline an invitation to play. That's how I always think about it. Even though I have 50 things going on, it's just in my head that just accept that invitation when it comes, because it's a beautiful thing.
And mindset wise, you could even turn that into a special time. Like you could say, like you notice yourself just be like, oh my God, I do not feel like rebounding, right? To turn that around and be like, okay, like I've got 10 minutes, let's do special time. We can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And he wants you to rebound. And then you're sort of free to just delight in him for those 10 minutes, knowing that in 10 minutes, the timer's going to go off and you're not going to have to be the bad guy, right? Yeah. So you don't have to do that. Like, okay, I really need to go. Like, I don't feel like doing this anymore. Like, kind of a thing. Yeah. It's like, special time's over, but I'd love to do this again with you sometime.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's precious time. So Tosha, one of the questions I really want to ask, and I'm sure is on a lot of parents' mind, and I know you've mentioned it a few times, is something that you work with very often with the parents that you're working with, is the issue of aggression. I know it's a complex issue. I know that there's no easy answers, and we could probably have a whole just summit on that in and of itself. I'm wondering if you, yes, I know. So I'm totally aware as I ask you this question, and being mindful of time. And I can't help but ask if you have any just simple, practical tools or strategies for parents who have children who are really struggling with aggression. What should they know? How should they approach it? What are some, I don't know, just any insights that you'd like to share, or tools that you'd like to share for them?
Yeah. Okay, I think I would start out by saying that this is an image I think that people can really fall back on. And I like to talk about it like this. I like to have like my little fist, this is your sweet boy. Okay. And he's good and he's curious and he's loving and he's cooperative and he's all of these things. And then sometimes, he kicks, he spits, he bites or whatever. These things are just behavior patterns, like negative behavior patterns that get glommed on this sweet boy. But the sweet boy never goes away. It's just that these behaviors kind of hide him, right? He's hidden under them. And so one of the things that's really useful as a parent is to just remind yourself of that so that you can make your goal, which is another thing here, to connect with that sweet boy rather than necessarily to just make the aggression go away. So it's like a mindset shift of rather than like, how do I stop him from doing this or stop him from doing that or stop him from doing that? It's like, how do I reconnect with that sweet boy underneath? Because once you do that, these behaviors will start falling away. So that's one image I think that can really help parents
really helpful
with aggression. Another thing that I would say is parents often come to me and they're just like, he's always doing this. It's like, it never stops, blah, blah, blah. And I have yet to see a child who's struggling with aggression where there's no pattern at all. And so one thing that you can do as a parent is to spend a few days or a week kind of noticing what the pattern is. When does this behavior bubble up? Because when you do that, you can show up much more prepared. Because one of the crazy things that we do is that with our kids, not just around aggression, but about any place where we're struggling with a behavior, is like we show up over and over again the same way, and we hope and pray that it's going to be different. But it's not going to be different. So if every day after school you bring your two boys home and while you're preparing a snack, they are hitting each other, and this happened yesterday and the day before and the day before and the day before and the day before, it's going to happen also today and tomorrow unless you do something differently, right? So to notice the pattern so that you can actually show up and make a plan. So maybe you come in and you play with them first, right? You have a big wrestling match or something. You get the yayas out, right? But you can plan and not feel so victimized by it, but empowered to actually create the change that you're longing for. I mean, there's so much to talk about aggression. I mean, this is like my favorite topic of all time. There's maybe one last thing that I have to say.
Please.
Limits are incredibly important. So it's imperative. I think it's probably our first order of business as parents to keep our children and everybody safe. So that's our children and us and siblings and other people. So if your boy is acting aggressively, it is your job to make that stop. And so sometimes that's going to have to be a physical stop. So a limit is a verbal limit when a boy is struggling with aggression is probably not going to do it. And so you're going to have to insert your body and make the behavior stop in the spirit of keeping everybody safe, which I feel is, part of our job as parents.
Sure.
And one last thing I'll have to say. I think it's my really favorite topic.
Yeah, great.
I think something else that could really help parents is just to say that really what's going on when your sweet boy is acting aggressive is that there's fear under there. And if you can just remember that sweet boy, that image of that sweet boy, and that he's scared, and that you want to reach for him and rebuild that connection, sometimes that mind shift can really help parents, because just think about like how much easier it is to feel empathetic towards somebody who's scared than empathetic towards somebody who's trying to punch you in the face, for example, right? But if we can do that mindset shift, then we can go like, okay, here's this scared boy, he's trying to punch me in the face, and then I can actually physically stop that from happening and allow him to feel the fear and the upset, but without me getting hurt.
Well, and it's so important that you bring that up, because I think there's that natural inclination to want to push away. Go to your room, go out of here. It's a lot of the pushing away, when really what you're saying is that those are the very times that we need to bring our boys in close, but that's when they're
Yes.
trying to let us know they need that connection. There's that fear under there. There's so much going on beneath the surface. And so I think
that's what I was trying to say. I could have just
no,
said that.
no, absolutely. But I think it's important because there is that natural, because what happens in our fear, as you were talking about earlier, our fears get triggered. And when we feel fear, we just, it's that natural push away to protect ourselves. And yet it's hard. I mean, I think it goes against what we naturally want to do, right? It's because I think when parents first hear that, bring my kid in, why would I do that? But I think there's so much, once we understand the brain science behind it, as you're saying, and all that fear underneath, that's when the change really happens, which I think is so incredibly powerful. And as
I think
you said, it starts with us.
Right. And I was just going to say that this is uber important with our boys. Like, I think extra important because girls have more of a tendency to reach out to other friendships, to have other close connections they can go to, call their girlfriends and complain about their parents or whatever it is, or process their feelings. They won't get shamed so much for crying or having a big upset. Our boys, when we isolate them like that, when they're struggling with aggression or other things, the message we're sending them is, you can show up when things are good, but when things are bad, you got to just deal with it on your own. And girls will tend to reach toward others, and boys often will isolate themselves. And that's where things get really scary in the world, right? We don't want our boys isolating themselves. We want to send the message like, I am here for you when you're awesome and when you're a total, I don't know what I can say on here, but I can say all kinds of
whatever
things.
you want.
Like when you're a total asshole, I'm still here for you. So we want to be sending that message so that they know we're not scared. I'm not scared of you. I get that it's hard. I'm here. Because they often won't go to other people. They often will just turn inwards, and that's a recipe for bad things.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the behavior just gets worse.
Absolutely.
It just gets worse. And then we wonder why it's not getting better. So yeah, that's
right. And then you can't make feelings go away, right? They don't just disappear. They have to come out somewhere. So then this is when we start getting into numbing, and they move into their teenage years, and this is where we get into drugs and we get into alcohol and pornography and like all sorts of addictions. So we don't want to go that way. We don't want to go that way. So we've got to send that message like, hey, I'm here. I've got you. This feeling is normal.
Yeah.
We're going to get through this.
We're going to get through this. Exactly. That's the one message I think that is so powerful to hear, is that I've got you. We can get through this and we'll figure this out together. So
right. As opposed to you have to go figure this out.
Yes. And I'm not here and I'm going to cut myself off from you. Yeah. Thank you. Tosha, this was so helpful. I know we could talk all day.
Yeah, totally. I know I get all fired up. Especially if you talk about aggression, then I get like, oh, good.
yeah. So we'll have to do it again. We'll have to have you back. So, Tosha, I know you were so kind and generous in offering a free gift for our viewers and listeners. And I wonder if you'd like to share with us what that is.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I would love to, I think this is what we talked about, but this is what I usually like to share, which is I have a program called the 10-Day Reconnect, which you mentioned at the beginning. And I run it live, a few times a year, but I also have it packaged up nice and neat, and I sell it for like $20, but I'm going to give it to everybody for free. You have forever access to it. And
that's amazing.
Log in, and essentially what it's going to do is it's going to guide you step by step into starting a practice of special time, which is one of the tools that we talked about. So it's a perfect match for what we talked about.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. Well,
and I will say also that if you're in that, like if people register for that, then they will also be notified when I run it live, and they can participate live later on in the year too. When I
Great. And then get that connection with the whole group. Yeah, that's incredible. So Tosha, how can parents find you and follow you?
So my website is toshashore.com, TOSHASCHORE. Everything's spelled wrong, my first name and my last name. And on Facebook, I'm at Tosha Schore, your partner in parenting boys.
Awesome. Love it. Well, Tosha, this has been incredible. I am so grateful for your time and for these incredibly valuable insights that you've really shared with us, really just helping us better understand our boys' inner life. I think that is so important. I think our boys desperately need us to understand their inner life. They may not realize it or know it, but it's so important that we take the time to really listen, as you said, which was one of my biggest takeaways, is just really listen, really show up with our presence, so that we can raise men who are comfortable in their own skin, comfortable with their own feelings, and comfortable with others' feelings. So thank you. This has just been such a joy. And parents, I really encourage you to take some time to reflect on this conversation. It's a very important conversation today. Jotting down any notes, any reflections that you have, your biggest takeaways. And again, just thinking about one thing that you want to commit to trying or doing differently moving forward based on what you heard Tosha share today.
So knowing that you're going to make mistakes, and then you get to go back and just try it again the next day.
Yes, exactly. It's messy, but that's okay.
Messy.
There's nothing like a good try again or do-over. I'm all about the good do-over. So yes, absolutely. So Tosha, thank you again for being with us today. And parents, thank you for being here, for taking this time out of your busy day. I know how crazy life is. So taking time out of your busy day, taking this time for yourself. And I look forward to seeing you again soon for another day of the Becoming Empowered Parent series. So thank you so much, and bye for now.